Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I'm going to show you the long, arduous process of creating a junk journal from start to finish. Now, I show you everything from starting with just paper and cardboard to creating the cover, the signatures, the pages, and even some elements that I put inside the journal. It's a Halloween-themed journal, which is always fun to take something festive and create something new just from papers and scraps. Now, the thing with this video that makes it a little different for me is that I wasn't thrilled with the result. Don't get me wrong, I'm very pleased with my journal that I made, but there are so many imperfections that I almost didn't show you the video. I spent a lot of time, hours in fact, creating this journal. And I think by spending so much time, it became near and dear to me, but I just didn't like the way it edited out, the way it looked. So I wanted to show you that process, the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect to be something that you can love. If you stick with me throughout the video, and it is long, almost 50 minutes long, it's just very long for me because I like to make a succinct video, well, you'll see all the steps that it requires to get to that point. So now with this journal, there were a couple of requirements that I had for myself when I made it. I wanted the spine to be exposed. I wanted to see the stitching of the pages, so it's not stapled together or glued together. It's sewn together. I used some hemp cord, but you can use any type of string that you like, that you have on hand. The whole point of this journal is it's supposed to be kind of thrown together with a little professional edge. So let me show you the things I really didn't like about my journal first. So this is kind of a first for me to actually showcase my failures and my insecurities about something I created. But in the interest of transparency and actually in personal growth, I think I'll do that. I think it's a great idea. So this journal is fairly large. It's got a lot of pages, which I was very pleased with. Most of my journals, I tend to skimp on the number of pages I put in. I love the feel and the texture. So those are some elements that I do like. Now I wanted an exposed binding, but with ribbon going through the stitching here on the signatures. And I got it, but this one's a little wonky, so I'm not really completely proud of that. The book itself, I love the fact that it opens up flat. It has a little tie closure. The front and the back cover, the straps need to be reinforced. I'm sure of it, but I'm not certain how I'm going to reinforce that. And I talk about that in the video, and I ask for your opinion as well. But I do like it. It is sturdy, and I like that I can include more and more things, because that's the point of this junk journal, is to tuck things inside of it. Things that I've made previously, things that I'm making just for it. I like the different textures, the different elements, and of course the Halloween theme. So I spent a lot of time stitching this journal, pulling out my stitches and restitching them, and I only showed the process for creating the stitching appropriately. I tried something new in that most of the times this journal would feature stitching through the cover to hold it in place. I didn't want to stitch through my cover, so I tried to go rogue here and try something a little unusual, and I can see why it needs to be reinforced. So that wasn't a bad thing necessarily. It wasn't a bad thing at all. It's just something I had to learn. I do like that I put in a lot of things here, and the colors are very Halloween-y, so that worked for me as well. The video is extremely long, and I really like to keep my videos a lot more succinct, so that was also very hard for me. But with all those things, I love this journal. I'm going to keep it, I'm going to improve upon it, and continue to fill it for years to come. So I wanted to show you the good and the bad, the behind the scenes. So now that you've seen some good, a lot bad and ugly, let's get started showing you the entire process, and you can judge for yourself if this is for you or not. So to get started making this book, I want to show you my supplies, talk you through some of the process, and then we can assemble the book. So for the book making, aside from the paper, one of the things that's most important is the adhesive if you're going to use it. Now I'm going to stitch the pages together, but for the glue, I use some fabric tack because I have some trim I want to attach, maybe Mod Podge for the cover. I have a glue stick as well. Now this is just a pointy awl. You can use an awl, you can use a pin, you can even use your needle, which is what I have here, It's a very large needle, like an upholstery needle that I'm going to use to stitch my pages together. This is some heavy duty thread, but there's a lot of thread you can use. You can use twine, anything you can fit through your needle. I have some Halloween themed ribbon, this little piece of stitching that I did with all these little Halloween colors and textures. 2 pieces of trim, small tassel and a larger tassel. And then I have my covers. Now this is just a box that I cut up from a delivery, and it's roughly 21 by 15.5 centimeters, or 6 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. And I just have 2 of them. As you can see, they're not cut perfectly, but they're approximately the same size. And because of the way I'm going to bind this, that little discrepancy isn't a problem. If it's a problem for you, just trim it down. I have a ruler here, heavy duty, because sometimes I want to tear paper, and I find this more helpful than scissors, but you'll need a pair of scissors as well. Just want to show you some of the papers I'm going to use, not because any of the paper in particular is of utmost importance, but just to show you the variety. So I have a bunch of paper scraps, and because this is a Halloween themed journal, I went through my papers as well as the scraps and just came up with any Halloween prints or colors. So I have a lot of dark colors. Some of the papers are double-sided, which is great. Some are not, and that's okay too. So I have a lot of blacks and off blacks, ones that are just hinting at black. I have some scraps of green, just because I always associate that with Halloween, as well as orange. So I have my pumpkin colors, as I call them. Then I have some deeper colors, some grunge paper, just with a white backing. This is a double-sided paper from a journal. This will make great pages. And I have that over here as well. And as you can see, I stuck to those colors. I have some cardstock in various sizes, additional colors, and just some more paper here. This is a printed paper with a backing. This is from a package of Halloween wreaths, but I just love the paper. Here are the templates for the wreath, but I think I can use these in my work. And additional paper. And now let me show you kind of the star of the show, what inspired this journal. So here I have my stash of supplies that I want to use for this wreath. All of these items came from the dollar store or dollar spot, different areas where it was very, very inexpensive. So I found these paper napkins, which I can cut apart and glue onto my pages. They just give some interesting perspective. And this one's cute, of all kids dressed in Halloween costumes or Halloween characters. This one's a little more ghoulish. I found a couple of cards, and I love that they open up. I'm not really interested in the card aspect, but I did like the front of these. I can also use the envelopes. One of my favorite things to use is paper bags in journals. Not only do they provide a pocket, but depending on the images you get, they make really fun little pages. So I have some here with some monsters, some jack-o'-lantern faces, some plain orange ones. This one says boo. It's got some ghosts. And then I have some just lunch bags, but they're all printed with, again, the characters, some candy corn, some witches. And if you open them, they have a little pocket as well. So you can just fold this over and you get a pocket. So we'll be playing with that. All these different designs. I love the window clings. They come in all these different characters. We've got the pumpkins and some bats. Trick or treat with potion bottles. More characters. Found this Halloween garland. It's kind of interesting. Looks like spider webs. Yeah, it's made of cardstock. So that's beautiful. I can take those apart and use those in my journal as well. Here's some novelty garland. I don't think these are paper. I think these skulls are plastic. So they make good templates or stencils, but they'd also make interesting things tucked in a journal. So I like that, particularly the colors that it comes in. There are these silhouettes, which are pretty fantastic. There's some more bats. I'd love to open up these and see what they are. Sizes, and that's really very cute. And then there's some spiders. And these are nice and scary. They've got little cutouts. So that'll be handy. And then some crows here, or ravens, I guess you could call them. So let's see what these look like. And these are a glossy paper, but those will work quite nicely. There's a few different designs, flying and soaring, all different ones. So that's great. We're going to start by covering our cardboard for the covers, and then we'll come back and work on the pages. So to cover my pages, I like to do that ahead of time because then I can let it dry. It takes a while to dry. And this project isn't necessarily something I do in a single afternoon. So I have two of my cardboard pieces here. And I just put down a brown paper mat on my table to protect the surface. And then I have these two grunge papers. Now they're a little thicker than regular paper. They're not quite as heavy as cardstock. So that will work out nicely. So I'll just show you how I cover one, and I'll do the other one off camera. What I like to do is set my paper down, and I like to have just a little bit of about a 1.5 to 2 inch border around the edges. And so I'll just trim that down. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a little bit bigger than I need, but that's totally fine. And I'll keep the scissors here. I could take a little of that Mod Podge. I like to work with it in a cap and using a sponge brush. So now I'm going to take the wrong side of this cardboard and just put a nice thin coat everywhere. Once I have that covered, I'm going to flip it over and set it right in the center, roughly, of my paper. And I want to burnish it. So I press it down, and then I flip it over and press it down again. Now here, what I like to do is just train the paper by going over the edges. So I start with the longest edge, not using any adhesive, just folding the paper. And I'm doing the same thing on the other side. And I love this paper. It's so beautiful. It's not classic Halloween, although you could definitely use a Halloween print if you wanted. I just like that little subtle hint. And then I can decorate the outside of the journal to be indicative of Halloween. So now, once I have this done, I like to cut my paper. And I cut it, essentially I'm removing these squares that I've made here on the fold, but I don't want to remove a perfect square. So I'm just going to cut a little bit on the end, inside here, and then I'll just trim it off. And I leave just a tiny little bit of paper there. And I'll do that on all 4 sides. So now I have what looks like a box. If I was to hold it up, it would sort of be a box. Now I want to attach each of those sides. And I'm going to start with the shorter sides first. So again, I just train it down. And then I'll just come in with a little bit of this Mod Podge, painting all over the paper a nice thin coat. And I fold it over and just burnish it down. Now you could use double-sided tape if you'd like, or matte medium, or even Elmer's school glue would work beautifully as well. So again, I burnish it down pretty well. Now I'm ready to work on the sides here. It takes a little more work, just because you want to cover that end piece, which is why we left a little bit of extra paper there. So as you can see here, the paper overhangs. So I'm just going to press it down with my nail. That covers it up. And then when I fold the paper over, I want to make sure that that tucks in. So I can even fold that in just a little bit. And that'll give me a nice, neat edge. Do that on both sides. Take my brush and add my adhesive. And now I just fold it over. Again, burnishing it as I go. Now there's going to be a paper cover on the inside of this page, but for now, this is all I need to worry about. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Again, I fold it in to cover that edge. And then I could add my Mod Podge or my glue and fold it over. And again, I burnish it well. And now I need this to dry. So I like to put a book or something on top of it just to hold it closed and to let it dry flat. So I'll do the same thing off screen with this piece, and then we can start making our pages. So before I get started cutting out my pages or my signatures, which I'm going to make, I wanted to set aside 2 pieces of paper for the backing of the covers. So I have them, they're cut just slightly smaller than the covers itself, but I'm not going to attach them yet. So this is going to be the inside of my book. Now the spine is going to be exposed, so this will work just fine. I'm going to set these aside, and now I can work on my signatures. Now the signatures are groups of pages that we put together and we're going to bind inside of our book. I like to make 2 or 3 sets. Some people like 5 sets. Some people like odd numbers. You can even use a single set of signatures. But I'm going to make 3 sets of signatures. So to make the signatures, I started out a template here. Now the cover of the book is roughly 6 inches by 8.5 inches or 15 centimeters by 21 centimeters, depending on how you use your system, metric or imperial. What I want to do though is I made a template here, and I know that my folded page can be no larger than this. It can be smaller, but it can't be larger or else it'll stick out from the book kind of funny. So I have my set of papers here, and all I'm going to do is take the papers, and I like to look around and see which papers are double-sided and which are single-sided. It doesn't really matter to me if the backing is white, but I do like to know going in how many papers I have that I can expect the backing to be different. So now I have 2 piles of double-sided pages and single-sided, and it doesn't matter, but I do like to mix them up. I like to have each group of signatures have some of each. I don't want to have just one type of paper. And if there's other things besides paper I want to put in, well, now's the time to do that. And by that I mean if I want to have a page that necessarily isn't paper. So I have this beautiful fabric here that I got from the fabric store. It's gorgeous. It's like spider web. And so what I'm going to do is cut enough to make a fabric page. It'll just look like a little overlay. And I just think that's so beautiful. So I'll cut that down to size as well. I don't know if I'll do 1 in each signature or maybe just 1 in the center signature. So right now I'm going to make all my signature pages. So I like to just eyeball this here. I know it has to fit in this little cardboard size page and can't be any larger. So I'll fold it down here and I'll clip it. And I can trim it down further later, but I have 1 page ready to go. Now for each group of signatures, I want to have about 10 pages, maybe some more. So I will take my paper here, this is 12 by 12 scrapbook paper or cardstock, and I'll fold it in half. And I'll see where that leaves me. So I have my template here, and it's just wide enough, so that's perfect. But I do have to trim it up. Now the beauty of this is if I want to fold it up, I can fold it into a pocket. So I'll lift the page here, make my mark where I want to fold it, and I can fold it just like this, and I'll burnish it neatly afterwards. I would adhere this down somehow, either staple it or glue it, And then when I fold it, I have pages with pockets. So that's a nice effect. And I can just double check that it fits within that size. If I want to just make a standard page, I'll trim this off. And I know that it can only be just shy of 8.5 inches tall and 6 inches wide. So the 12 inches is fine because I'm going to fold it, but this part has to only be 8.5 inches. And I like to have it just shy of 8.5 inches. And so now when I fold it, it should fit nicely. And if it doesn't, I'll just trim it up. So here's my folded page. Here's my cover, and it's just a little big. So I'll just trim that down with my paper cutter. And now it fits beautifully. So ultimately, when I make the signatures, I'll stick the pages inside of each other. And as I build them up, there'll be more and more that stick out. So I could trim them down as well, just to make that neat edge. But for now, I want to get my pages together and make about 10 pages in each signature, each of those group of pages. So I'll do that off camera and show you how that looks. So while my covers were drying, I folded a bunch of paper and I made some different pages. I wanted to show you them both. So these are just pages that are folded, just little pieces of paper, and they're all approximately the same height, within an inch of the height. But these are just pages that are folded in half, and they all have the center fold. Some are plain cardstock, some are plain paper with the white on the inside. Some are pattern paper, things that I showed you earlier. And that's all these are just folded different patterns and colors of paper. So I like to have some of those because then they can be written on inside and we can embellish them further. But these are some other pages that I started to embellish, and I wanted to show you just some really quick ideas. Here I took some fabric that I thought was just beautiful, cut it down to size, and then because I know I'm going to pierce through here to bind it, I Mod Podged some paper on either side, just a strip of paper, and I'll flatten it out so you can see. I put the Mod Podge on one side of the paper and pressed it together with the other, and then I folded it. So this is how it would look as a folded page. It'll be bound here on the binding, but this will be a very interesting texture. It's a little bit of an overlay. So that's a fun thing to do with fabric or lace. Here's one bat that I cut out. I'm going to use that center to bind it. Now it'll stick out further than the book, so I'm going to have to bend those wings further in. And that'll be fun to do, to figure out exactly how I want it. I could back the backing with additional paper, or I could paint it. A lot of fun possibilities. So here's just another folded page, and I just took one of these die-cut spiders and glued it to the center. It's kind of a fun, unexpected surprise, and I love the contrast with the white. Now on this page, so I took those paper bags. They come in different patterns. I thought this one was particularly cute with that green background. It still has the gusset here, but all I did was cut it to size. So I just took my paper cutter, cut the top off the bag, approximately the height that I wanted. And then I attached it. I also glued this part, the folding part of the bag, down just with a little school glue. And then using double-sided tape, I glued the bag right to the piece here. And then I took another piece of cardstock and started just a little tag to tuck into that piece. So that's going to be this page. I thought that was really rather cute. And it's a nice way to use that pre-printed bag. And here are some examples of those bags. That's just one way to use it. I have just greeting cards because they fold in, they have a cute front. I can use those as pages. You can cover the back or just leave them as they are. They're awfully cute. So here I took another bag and just folded it on the side. I have a pocket in here that I can tuck things in, and a pocket on this side. And the way I did this is I just took the bag, pulled off the handles, folded it down, and cut each size. The reason I didn't use these bags this way, they just didn't fit. There are other ways I could have done it, but I just thought it was cute with the ghosts. When it opens up, you just see ghosts, and ghosts fly in all directions. And then I have a pocket page. So here's a spider web garland. Took it apart, and I just glued it down into place and trimmed off any overhang. So that gives a totally different look to that plain paper. I did the same thing with this plain green paper on this side, so that when you open this page, it's a little unexpected surprise. And it's another thing that looks really great to contrast against solid paper. Now here I took two pieces of paper together to get the nice length, and then I folded pockets on the sides. This is a shorter page, but I have these two pockets that I can tuck things in. So I used some of the garland here of these little plastic skulls. I have areas to write here. I can tack things down. I think that came out really well as another page, and it adds a lot of interest. So now this one was very interesting. I had just the original folded page here of the orange, and I took these envelopes that came with the cards, and I reversed the fold, and I attached the fold down to the paper and glued it down. After it was glued down, I attached another set of spider webs, and I did that on either side. And this way I have fold-out flaps on this page. I cut the cards just so that I have the front part. They're kind of like little pull-outs or tags, and I can fill this and embellish it further. And on the front, I put just a plain card that I cut the front on. I did the same thing on the back. However, on the back, I just taped around the sides, so I have a little pull-out here. And this witch came from a bag with the witch. It's just something to do to add a little more interest to the pages. For this one, I took the page and I folded up a pocket. And then I can just have two tags that I can decorate as well. And I'll show you how I do that with some of the clings, the window clings from the dollar store. On this page, I made little pockets. They don't go the full length, just small little pockets. So this one I tucked this in, and I'll tuck other things as well. This one's kind of a tuck spot, so this part is open, and I glued this down just for some contrast. And I like how this came out. And now for this page, I folded the 12 by 12 paper down, and I cut little spots, and now I can slip things underneath here. It's kind of an unexpected thing. And I have the little paper clips to hold that down. So it's a flip spot. You can do that on the bottom or the top. I thought doing it on the top was a little more interesting, just something different. Most of my pockets are all down here. For this one, I folded over one side to make a pocket here that I can tuck something in. And I have a side pocket here to tuck more tags and things in. I think that came out really cute. For here, I just took the 12 by 12 paper, folded up the pocket. You can see it's one giant pocket, but I'm going to use it individually. And I just secured the ends with adhesive. For this one, I took that folded paper. I just stuck in what they call a belly band. It's just another piece of paper. This way I can tuck this in and add to this and embellish it further. And it tucks right back in. This was another piece of beautiful paper, the black and white. So I made a little hinge and glued down another little spot just to tuck things and open. I like that interaction. I have a couple of tags here I'm going to embellish on this pocket. So that's another page. And then my last page was this piece of 12 by 12 paper. I folded it in half. I added a pocket here. Added a bunch of things that I can embellish further. And with this pocket, I have just this cute little notepad. And again, I use the paper bags here. So now the next step is to take all of our pages and create 3 separate signatures. Now to do that, I like to take all of my folded papers and make a pile of them. And then all my specialty, as I call them, papers that are folded. The cards I put with the folded paper, but all my specialty paper, my paper with pockets, I'll make a separate pile. And now all I've got to do is divide these up in thirds. Take my little bat and put that here as well. So I'll divide them up, making 3 piles. And when I'm happy with how they look, I'll have 3 signatures. So let me do that, and we'll come back to the next step. So now I have my 3 signatures here, and I've clipped them together. And so I can access the center of those signatures. And here's the first one. So now I've got to start poking holes. But before I do that, I have to decide where I want to bind these. So what I need to determine is where I'm going to stitch my signatures and my book cover together. So I made a template, which is just a piece of scrap paper, the height of the book. And so now I can decide where I want to make my stitching. What I want is this ribbon to go through the stitching and attach to the front of the book, maybe in 3 spots. So I'll just roughly cut 3 pieces of ribbon. This is a beautiful gray velvet ribbon. And now I just have to measure that width. So it's approximately 1 inch. So I need to have a little bit of give on either side so that I can thread this through the stitching. So if I'm going to have 3, I'm just going to eyeball it here. It's going to go just like that. And I can always change it, make it come closer if I want. I think I like it fairly spaced evenly. So now just with my pen, I'm just going to mark where the ribbon is, just giving it a little extra. And so these are the spots that the ribbon's going to feed through. So what I like to do is fold this in half. And with a ruler, I'm just going to trace across these lines. And so where they intersect here on the fold, that's where I'm going to pierce the pages. Now this is where I'm going to make my stitching on the signatures on these holes. So what I'll do is I'll just invert that fold, and with an awl or a needle, I'm just going to punch that hole on all of them. And at this point, you just want to make sure that you can see on either side of that hole, you can see your ribbon. If it's too tight, you won't be able to thread the ribbon through. So that worked out well. So now I just need to take my signature, each stack of them, just like this. I center the template, and I like to just trace that mark here. You can do this with a pen, just using a pencil. And I can see all my marks. And now I'm just going to come in here and with my awl, just gently poke through all the holes until it comes out on that seam. So I'll do this on all 3 signatures. So now I've punched the holes in all the signatures, and I want to start binding them. So what I'm going to do is I took some of this thread. This is just green hemp. You can use any type of thread. And then I like to use just a little beeswax, and I just run the thread through the beeswax. And this helps it just glide a little bit better through the paper. Now, a rule of thumb is to use 7 times the height of the pages to know how much thread to cut. So I've measured it 7 times, and I gave a little extra. So we'll start with one signature here. So I'm going to start here, starting at the base, the last hole down. I'm going to come in from the inside, pull all my thread through, and I leave a little bit of a tail, maybe 4 inches. And then I'm going to come over here through the next hole and come back in, trying to make sure I go through all the pages just as I poke the hole through the awl. It might take a little finagling, especially in the beginning, to get it set. So I have my first section bound. I'm going to come over here and go on my next one. And thread through, and then come back in from the outside. And then I'll come back out here. And then go back in. And then to really reinforce it, I'll go through the holes again, but I want to skip here to the center one so that my thread always comes out on the same way that I've already threaded. Come back down. Following that path. Then when I get to the last one, I'll go in. And then I'll knot off these threads. Just use a double knot. Now I'm not going to cut my thread, but I am going to go out one more time through that space, that same space, the original space we came in on. And now I'm ready to attach my next signature. So I want to make sure that I get the signature that I want in my center. And I'm going to do the same thing, coming in from the bottom, on the outside, and I want to make sure I get right to the center of that signature. And then I'm going to go, I'm going to come down here, go through the center, start to pull it snug, and I want to come back in through that first hole that we made. It's a little unruly at first, but we're trying to secure all the signatures together. So now you're going to skip that center hole and come out that middle hole. So you want to continue threading up to the top of your second signature. And when you get to the top, just as I have here, I'm going to come back out through that center hole, and I'm going to go through that first signature again. And it doesn't matter if you do this on the top or the bottom. You're just trying to secure your signatures together. And this is what makes the book into a single book, all these different signatures. So I'm pulling my thread through. So now I'm in the first signature. I'll come out again. And I'll thread it through the second signature. And then I can just pull it taut. And now those two signatures are anchored together. So now I'm going to come up through that center hole, again, following the way I've already done it. Pull that thread through, and now I'm ready to start the third signature. Remove these clips because they're a little bulky, make it a little hard to handle. And so now I'm at the top of the page. And I want to go to the second hole in the top of this signature. And make sure I'm open to the center. Put my needle through. I'll come out through the first hole. And now I'll go back in the second hole, and I can pull my thread a little taut. And now I'll continue threading. Again, I can pull my thread taut, go to the next hole, and so on, right down, and then right down the book. I'll come up the next hole here, so I'm in the second hole again, second hole from the bottom. And now I'm going to thread through the previous signature. And this will help anchor it into place. So make sure I'm opening that correctly. And then I come back in through the last hole. And then finally, I want to go back in to the signature where I ended up with. So I still have a length of thread on my needle. And now my signatures are together. So I'm just going to thread up that signature, following the holes I've already created. So I'll skip right to the second. Stitch through here again. Stitch up through here. Stitch through here again. And now I want to connect them at the top as well. So I'll double back. Stitch down the second hole of the second signature. And up the top. And I want to bring my thread right out the top of the last signature. So now I'm going to bring my thread down here to this middle hole, and with the needle, I'll just make a little knot. Double knot, thread the needle through, and then I can clip it. Now if I remove the clips, after all that process, my signatures stay together. So the next stage is to add the covers to the book. So now to attach the front of the book, you have to decide if you want to have some ribbon or a closure. And I think I'm going to have some ribbon going through the covers. It'll reinforce it, but it'll also be a way to tie the book shut. So I have some green ribbon for that. It's very thin nylon ribbon. I also have my inside pieces here, my pages, that I'll attach after I add the ribbon. First thing I want to do is take my signatures and take the ribbon that I cut out. And I'll use this clip to see if I can hold this book shut. And I want to thread that ribbon underneath here through all the sections. So all 3 sections if I can. If it doesn't work out, like this one here is wonky, I can skip that section, but I'll try and get it on the top too. So now that I have my covers done and I have my ribbon attached, once it's dry, it'll be nice and secure. That fabric tack glue is very strong. So now I'm going to take my book of signatures, set them on the back cover. And I'm going to take my scissors here and just trim any ends down. You can always trim them further. I'm going to take that cover and put it underneath. I just want to make sure it lines up nicely. And now I'm going to take more of that fabric glue. And I'm really going to secure it on the back of this ribbon here. This is what's going to attach the cover to our piece. So I like to start with either the top or the bottom one. A nice generous amount of glue. I don't want to put it on the sides, just on the area that's going to interact with the cover. And then I set it down. I'll go and do this with all 3 pieces. So once I'm happy with how it's set, I'll just burnish it again and then let this dry. I'm purposely keeping these loose because I don't want to make my ribbon too tight, holding my book closed too tightly. As my book fills up with all the good little goodies I'm going to put inside of it, it's going to expand, so I need there to be a lot of give with this ribbon. I'll let this dry, and then when it's dried, I'll come back and attach the other side. So let me show you a couple of ways to use these window clings in your junk journal. You can stick it to the junk journal completely. You just peel off a piece, and you can use some Mod Podge. It's just a little vinyl cling, and it gives a really interesting, kind of a cute image, depending on the image you're choosing. What I like to do is make tags out of them. So I'll look for ones that are particularly appropriate for what I'm using them for, and then just play around with adding them in. So I think I want to choose this pumpkin here, and I can set it right there on any of my pages. So it's kind of a fun little look. I think I'm actually going to put it right here on this little black card. And I can tuck that in the junk journal. Just put a little Mod Podge to hold that in place. And then I can just play around with that on other tags as well, looking through these clings to see which one I want to add. I think I'll go right back to that really cute bat, and I'll cut off the wings after I Mod Podge them down. Maybe I'll take another look. Here's just a paper spider. I can tuck that in, or I can just add that to a tag. That looks really great with the white background. I have some other little objects, a little wooden ghost that I painted. I think I'll just tuck that in a pocket. And for this one, I have it here. Maybe something I can add to that. So I'll look through these, come up with something. These are really cute. So this just brightens up the tags, makes them a little different, kind of fun to play around with. So you might want to think about that the next time you see these window clings. When the book is dry, I'll just show you how I put everything in it and just the last minute changes I've made to the book. So now I finished putting things in the book. The book is not finished. I do have a couple little things I'm still working on, as well as some fun treasures to store inside of it. But I wanted to show you what it looks like when it's all put together. So I strung beads on the ends of these ribbons here. just for the closure. And it's somewhat adjustable. Now, typically with this type of binding, they stitch through the cover as well, but I didn't want to do that, and that's why I just used the ribbon. So I think it might need a little more reinforcement. I'm thinking of taking a couple of bats and sticking them on either side of both pages, front and back. Leave your opinion in the comments if you think that would look cute or is that too much. The book is pretty secure, but I do want to reinforce it somewhat. I can always use just the ribbon as well. So here are just some different pages from all the signatures. You'll recognize some of the things I tucked inside. This is part of the bag. And I decoupaged a napkin onto some card, and I added a little trim. I love it when the books are interactive. You can do things with them. Card, little girl, different things throughout the book. And there's so many pages, it's just lovely. I have a little tab on this. On the other side of that bag, another piece here. It's a big project and it takes a lot of time, but the results are great and I can continue to add to it and work on it for years to come if I wanted. So I think it's kind of fun that way. I glued down the spider to make this big tag, and I made a little cluster here and attached just a little rubber spider. Just think it's really cute. Here I have some paper clips that I made that I attached. Be good to hold different things. More pockets. Here's the bat, at least half of it. Here's the other half. I glued trim on the end of one page. I have a pocket here. I glued trim on this pocket as well. And then underneath here, I have this tag just stuck in with a paper clip. A little card here. I love the way those webs look. And this unexpected webbing here of this paper. And then on the last signature, I have all these different colors, patterns, things that open up and tuck. It makes for a really nice journal. Here I just tucked in some different things. I'll continue to work on that. And I think that's part of the fun, is discovering all that's inside. I changed around the belly band. I thought the ghost was more appropriate there. And that's the end of the book. So now I just get to working on it and filling it up. And I'll do future videos with different techniques of things to fill that book. So that's my entire process and my decision on whether I liked it or not, and what I didn't like and what I did like about the journal. Overall, I like it and I will cherish it. So that's good. And I'll continue to add to it. But as you can see, there were parts to it that weren't quite right. That's okay. Sometimes creating and making things is good enough. I did ask you what you thought of the binding, the additional binding, if whether I should use those paper bats or ribbon to reinforce it. What do you think? Be sure to comment below. And thank you for joining me today.